Welcome to Gaia's Love, a podcast to guide you home into your human journey here on Earth. My name is Vivian Gerard, and it is my delight to co-create with Gaia and share our messages from Source in this now moment. Here we go. Episode 494. It is Friday here in Cincinnati. It is beautiful. We have blue skies and sunshine on tap for the whole weekend. And it is a time with intense duality and quite a stretch in the capacity of what's available for us to support and witness and experience here on this planet. The title for today, Walking the Wire, comes from an Imagine Dragons song, and I'll read the lyrics in a little bit. I had a really challenging episode last week where the emotions were so raw and so layered and complex inside of me, and my commitment to showing up for myself, for you, for this space of authenticity put me here in this chair, and I just cried for the whole time. I haven't watched the episode yet because I know I'll just start crying all over again because the emotions were so true and deep, and sitting with it was the greatest way through, the greatest support I could offer myself, and the most real I could be with where I am. At the time that I recorded it, we knew there was a hurricane coming towards Florida, and we, as a collective society, we thought we knew what might happen. But now we sit here a week later, and the devastation from this hurricane is beyond what anybody could have predicted. I believe there are many who are saying this could be the worst national disaster we've ever had in this country. And just from the limited footage I've seen that they're able to capture, it's a really wide impacting, high cost in life and changes of reality for so many people. And so when I sit here now and I look back at what I was experiencing last week, there's a few things that I immediately think. One is, how silly some of my things that I get concerned about are, that the things that make me upset, the quality of my audio recordings is such a small, insignificant thing in the grand scheme of life. Also, how quickly perspective can shift, that in one moment we can have this experience that's real and true and intense and deep, and then a few hours, a few days, a week, a few years later, the whole entire reality is completely shifted and different. And then also the depth of the emotion I was feeling. I knew as I was feeling it, it seemed almost irrational or illogical to me that this one thing was having such an impact on me or triggering me so deeply. But I also could feel there were all the other things underneath it that I named in the podcast that were part of it, the completion of the cycle and just the journey of my business, my work, the feeling like I'm trying and being, walking into the wind, being resisted against. I think the intensity of the emotions was also a collective frequency or shift that was moving through, not just here in the United States with the hurricane, but around the world. There are very volatile, intense, emotionally escalating conflicts that are happening all the time, and in particular right now. And so sometimes when we're having our own individual experience, I think it's easy to judge ourselves and criticize ourselves, like, get over it, or why can't you move through this, or why are you such a baby? These are just words sometimes I say to myself. Maybe you're even meaner to yourself than that. Maybe you really call yourself some names. I think sometimes our individual experience is absolutely being squeezed or intensified by the collective experience. And maybe what was about to be moving through the United States, just for one example, that collective emotion of grief and shock and devastation and why is this happening? Why is this to me? Why now? Just that emotional charge was an energetic that was moving across our country, and our individual experience gets swept into that collective frequency. It touches us, it ripples through all of us. And so perhaps last week's podcast was also a reminder for me, a reminder for all of us that it's okay to feel deeply. It's okay to share when we're feeling deeply, and it's going to move. There will be a shift in how we're feeling, and it really is about breathing through it, finding the support where we need it. I've received some of the most beautiful messages from listeners, just like, wow, just so beautiful, and affirming that there are people listening when we are wanting a message to come through and it's authentic and like soul deep to us. There will always be someone who is a match to that energy, and we find each other, we synchronize up, and when we allow ourselves to walk together and support each other through those moments, I think that is just a beautiful gift. So yeah, I have a bit of a vulnerability hangover in this moment, and I also am just trusting. Brene Brown talks about that. I also am just trusting. There's so much wisdom that we can learn from each other when we share our human stories. I think there are many people who are afraid of AI, for example, artificial intelligence. It'll only take us to a certain point, and then humanity, the human emotions, the human connection, the depth of intimacy, that is not AI-able. That's not replicable by a machine. It just isn't. And times like this, when there's a lot of chaos and intensity, I feel like humans step up and open their hearts, open their homes, open, their consciousness to people, to experiences, to life around us in a way that is just extraordinary. I think that's the gift of any crisis. The gift is that it reminds us of our humanity, and we are often activated to be better humans, to be kinder humans, and way more compassionate and caring than when we're not in a crisis. Not that I'm saying we should be in a crisis all the time. I don't think that's sustainable at all. But I think when it happens, it's a reminder. And that's what I'm experiencing and have been watching so many people experience this week. We had a new moon partial eclipse in Libra this week. Libra is the sign of balance, harmony, justice, relationships, partnerships, beauty, art. It's an invitation for us to go in deeper to the places where we connect with other people. And when an eclipse adds its intensity to it, it can bring up the opposite. It can bring up where we're not that yet. It can show us the shadows within ourselves and within other people. And I think that's what's been happening with the hurricane after effects. The invitation, I believe, is always to become closer, to become more supportive, for a community to lean in and walk through the crisis closer than before, and letting go of the barriers or separation or division that may have been there before the crisis. So it's interesting to see the astrology here in the human realm in this way. My heart just hurts for how much suffering is happening and how many people have lost their lives, and also how many people are trying to rebuild, trying to just get their bearings again. So I trust that you know the ways that I share in this podcast are coming from deep love and support. And then I simply add in what it brings up for me, what my own experience or reflections are. I think what might be helpful or a good integration after last week's episode, I just can feel this like lump in my throat right now. And it's just, there's a lot of emotion, and I think many of us are feeling that, and allowing it to have voice is so important. Sharing, expressing, letting the energy move is so important, instead of locking it in, trapping it, holding it. When we just let energy move, the emotions just flow, then the energy keeps flowing, and then another emotion will come after that. But when we grip it and tighten it and hold it, and it stops all the energy from just moving. And so I can feel that that's what's happening right now. There's been a lot I've been wanting to say, and it's been sitting here in my throat. So now it's starting to move. Okay, what I was going to share, I think it's a good integration after sharing so much struggle, to give the results, to say here was the next thing that happened that led to this, that led to this. And I think it's a completion of an energetic of me sharing it here. I think it's also validation of how I ended last week's episode, which is I'm going to keep going. I'm going to figure it out. It's not the end. It's just the next step. It's just the next, learning for me, the next thing that my soul and my mind and my body are pushing through. It was a pushing through. I was going to say, was it pushing? Yeah, it took a lot of effort to figure this one out. It was definitely a pushing through. And maybe there's an easier way, but I haven't figured it out yet. But I might. The big thing that was just the cap of the pile of all the things that was being felt last week was the issue I was having, stumbling over my words, the issue I was having with getting the quality of my audios to where they needed to be so that I could upload this track to Insight Timer and have it be approved as premium. And I just felt like no matter what, it wasn't working. And I thought I had tried the right technology and it didn't work. And I received the feedback that morning before the podcast that, no, it's rejected again, again. What happened after the podcast, after my son called and we had a good chat, and then I came on here and I shared what was going on, I went back to my computer and I sent an email to the person who had rejected the track from Insight Timer, their team. And I said, could you please provide more detail? I just don't quite know if I know what to do, and it would be helpful to hear. So I was really proud of myself for speaking up and asking for support, which maybe some people were like, of course you would do that. Why didn't you do that? But I hadn't done it before. I did it this time. And then I went into a community space that another teacher had created, and it's called Downward Dug. I think I shared that too. I went in, I said, can someone tell me what works for you? How do you get the premium tracks through, and can you give any tips? Well, this one woman replied, and she said, yes, I would love to listen to your track. I might have told you this. I can't remember if that happened right before the podcast. Anyway, I sent it to her. She immediately replied. I don't think I knew this before the podcast. She immediately replied after she listened to it, like within a little bit of time, and she's on the other side of the world. And she said, there's this thing that you do in the audio. You have a sharp inhale breath before you speak. And she said, I don't think they like that in the premium quality. I think they want it to just be the words and the energy, or that's my word, the words and the meditation, not all the breathing. She said, if you have the MP3 without the music, I can clean it up for you. And I said, no, I would never ask you to do that. That's so much work. I'll figure it out. I'll sit with my computer and I'll edit it. So I wasn't ready for that on Friday. Saturday, we were busy all day. Sunday afternoon, I started editing. It took me 4 hours to edit a 30-minute track. I tediously went through and clipped any time where there was a little sharp inhale, which I found out was every single time I had a sentence. I was constantly, which maybe in normal conversation, I don't know, you might be listening to this, you're like, yeah, I know you've been doing this forever. I hadn't heard it that way. I went through, cleaned it all up, re-edited, moved a couple things around, changed the music, put it through the Auphonics cleaner, all the things. All the things. And then I uploaded it on Sunday evening. This morning, and I've been waiting all week, looking at my emails. This morning, I received a confirmation that they have approved the premium track. My first premium track was 6 a.m. right when I was getting up. I checked my email because I just felt like it's going to happen today. And there it was. So I had to tell my husband how excited I was. It was so good. It's so good. I just want to say in this moment, I'm so delighted that I figured it out. And also, it's been a bit of humble pie for me this week because I've been listening to some of the other things I've created, and I do that all the time. I do it everywhere. I didn't realize that. This morning in my meditation, I was listening to myself. Sharp inhale breath all the time. So the bigger picture, the bigger gift that my soul was showing me in this whole entire experience with trying to figure it out is it's not necessarily the technology. It's the actual process. It's the frequency, the energy that I'm delivering through the meditation that needed my attention. It's a practice that is distracting for some people, apparently, because Insight Timer said no. It's a distracting habit or way of sharing meditation that I have the power to clean up. And so how do I do that? And, that's my next process or up level is to notice when I am doing that and do it less and eventually shift it or not have it at all. I have been doing that with a podcast for years, but more in the word choices. I would go through different phases where I would say one word, and when I would re-listen to the podcast episode, I would hear that word over and over, and I'd focus the next time on not saying that word. And I found that I'm not perfect, but I definitely have a smoother way of sharing my thoughts, my stream of consciousness now than I did in the first episodes. If you go back and listen, you'll be like, whoa. Because I listen to some of my older meditations and I think, man, you rambled all over the place. Like, what even was that? And so it's just this journey of getting better and better at whatever our craft is. And being so committed to the craft, so committed to the level of quality and integrity and standard that we hold ourselves to, that we're willing to go in and take a look. We're willing to receive feedback from someone we don't know and go, I do that, you're right. And it must be really annoying if you don't like it because you're going to hear it 50 times in 30 minutes. That would be very annoying. Maybe 100 times. I don't even know. It was a lot. And I can rely on technology to do some of the work, but there's a bigger issue to be explored. So often our soul is bringing us the resistance because there's some need to slow down and examine what's actually happening right in front of us, to look for the threads and look for the growth, to understand from a different perspective or lens something new that we hadn't explored before about ourselves. This reminds me of when I started college. More humble pie. When I started college, as a senior, I was one of the class officers, and I had a lot of friends. I had moved there in 9th grade from another city and really focused on building a big community of friends and getting involved in different activities and clubs. I was really having a good time in high school, and I felt like I've got a lot of these things figured out. And then I went off to college to this little liberal arts school in Indianapolis, and I took a speech class my first semester. And I remember in the first class, one of the first classes, the professor said, I think I need to see you outside of class. And I'm like, oh, This professor thinks I'm doing a great job because I also was good grades, did really well in high school. I'm like, this is going to be great. I go in and he says, you have a lisp. Do you know that? And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't understand. He's like, you do this thing with your S's and it's really distracting. And if you're actually going to do something with speech, you probably need to figure this out and get it cleaned up. He said, so I would suggest you start working with a speech therapist. So I call my mom back home. I'm like, yeah, I need speech therapy, which I don't think was covered by insurance. And so we added that to the cost of college tuition, and I started doing speech therapy. It did not clean up my lisp. You've probably noticed ages ago, if you've been listening to this for a while, that I have a lisp. And most of the time it doesn't bother me. Most of the time I don't think it bothers other people. But there are moments where it's really sharp and the S sound is not great. And I've noticed it more in meditations. So in my humble pie eating time, I am working on how to hold a frequency, deliver a meditation experience that requires a lot more conscious effort, or that's not the right word. Moving my ego out of the way enough to allow the energy to come through and not get tripped up in trying to make it perfect, but also being aware of the habits I have that are distracting. And that's requiring me to speak a little slower, which is really hard for me, to be more deliberate in my word choice. I'm getting better at it, but also can be challenging. To be more professional. Well, we know how that goes. It's a growth edge for me, and I may never get it perfect or get it right, but I am committed to working on it and being better. And I feel like that really is the grace, isn't it? For all of us. Whatever the thing is that comes up as I'm sharing all of this for you, whatever that is, trust that when you commit to it, you will be shown the ways that you can improve. You will be shown the patterns that are not serving, the threads that you have the power to control and change. I say this a lot in my live events and my sessions. When you have awareness, when you are shown what you are doing or why or how you are doing it, then you have the choice to change the behavior. But if you're not aware, how do you know how to change it? And that's what I was experiencing with my in-breath. If I'm not aware I'm doing it, how am I going to stop doing it? But when I know that I do that, then I have the choice. I can keep doing it, and then I just won't have premium tracks, and that's okay. Or I commit to increasing my quality, to improving my abilities, and I shift into something different. It seems so petty to be making this about an audio file and a meditation, but it's just one example. And I feel like that example can be applied to everything that we do in our lives. Are we committed as, we'll go big picture, are we committed as souls having human experiences to go as deeply and powerfully into the human experience as possible, to really look at all the layers that are sitting there, all the things that actually trip us up, that don't serve us, the things we do that are toxic for somebody else or disruptive for somebody else? Can we look at all of that, and as we're going into being human more and more, become better humans? When we have awareness, we can change our behavior, and then we can continuously be improving. But if we're not aware, how do we know? So I shall read to you. See, I'm doing this breath thing all the time. I shall read to you the lyrics from Walking the Wire. And it's by Imagine Dragons. I believe when he wrote it, it was probably about a relationship, a person. I feel like it can be seen, and this is how I was feeling it today, because I heard the lyrics in my meditation before this. It feels to me like our soul talking to our human, our collective guides and energies and beings that work with us, talking to all of us as humanity. It could even be Gaia, Earth, talking to us as humans. So these are the lyrics. And do you feel the same when I'm away from you? Do you know the line that I'd walk for you? We could turn around, or we could give it up. But we'll take what comes, take what comes. Oh, the storm is raging against us now. If you're afraid of falling, then don't look down. But we took the step, we took the leap, and we'll take what comes. Feel the wind in your hair, feel the rush way up here. We're walking the wire, love. We couldn't be higher up. We're walking the wire. There's nights we had to just walk away, and there's tears we'll cry, but those tears will fade. It's a price you pay when it comes to love. And we'll take what comes. We'll take what comes. Feel the wind in your hair. Feel the rush way up here. We couldn't be higher up. We're walking the wire, so look out down below. Oh, I'll take your hand when thunder roars, and I'll hold you close. I'll stay the course. I promise you from up above that we'll take what comes. We'll take what comes, love. We're walking the wire. We couldn't be higher up. We're walking the wire, so look out down below. And this morning I did it again. This morning, I'm going to clear this. I will clear this pattern. This morning I was looking at a post on Instagram by a beautiful account called Source Messages. If you're not following them, they're amazing. I think it's just one man who writes all of these, but he's been doing it for a few years, and they're consistently just deliverable nuggets of magic from Source. Here's what he says for October 4th. You're seeing your world through a different lens. You're meeting life in new ways, and it's meeting you right back by opening up different paths to your purpose. This isn't the result of a reversal of fortunes, but rather the results of the shadow work and deconditioning that you've put yourself through. There is so much yet to be experienced, but you ground yourself by recognizing the massive shifts that have already shaken the core of who you thought you once were. Let me say that again. There is so much yet to be experienced, but you ground yourself by recognizing the massive shifts that have already shaken the core of who you thought you once were. You're stronger, wiser, and more intentional than ever before. I love that. I totally agree. I feel like all of us are being offered this invitation to become more than we ever have been. And as we do that, I believe it's the best thing for the world. It's the best thing for humanity. And the more of us who are doing that, the more that momentum is going to keep turning. And we will create a life on earth that we can't even quite imagine yet. One of my friends said that on the call this morning. She said, what we are building together is so beautiful. Not just us, but all of humanity. And there's some work to do before we get there. So, if you are looking for community, I am building a beautiful community space in Insight Timer. Come join us there. Or my first premium track is up. It's called Asking the Bigger Questions. It's so good. I just love it. I think it's such a beautiful, beautiful visualization about why we're here on this planet. And then, see, I breathed in again. The Practicum has all of our events lined up for the month of October. So if you would like some community engagement live with me via Zoom in conversations, not just one way, the Practicum is such a beautiful space for that. And you can find that on my website. My retreat is happening. It's being booked. I found the place. I had to move coasts in Florida. We were originally scheduled on the West Coast. We have now moved to the East Coast outside of Orlando. We will be together at the beach. The place is literally on the beach, this little tiny home. It's beautiful. And we will be doing some deep soul work for 3 days as Pluto moves into Aquarius November 19th. It is exactly the energy, the frequency that I wanted to be in. And I'm inviting you to come and join me. If you feel like it's a match, you'll know. You can find that information under events on my website. And if you just need support in a session, book a session. Let's spend some time together and see how I can support you. Okay, I am off to prep our house for a full family weekend. Wish me luck. So much love. Thank you for tuning into this vibration of pure love. Let's take this message of Gaia's love out into all of our relationships and communities today. So much love from my heart to yours.